There's also a focus on athletes' mental health with the news that American track star Sha'Carri Richardson is no longer competing in the Olympics.
So Richardson tested positive for marijuana after she qualified for the games in the 100-meter race. She was suspended for 30 days, and because she was not picked for the relay team, she won't be going to Tokyo at all. Richardson apologized for the positive test, saying she used marijuana to cope with the death of her biological mother.
And here to discuss are Al Harrington, a former NBA player and now CEO and co-founder of Viola, a cannabis company, and Dr. Sue Varma. She's a clinical assistant professor of psychiatry at NYU and an NBC News medical contributor. Thank you both for being here. I mean, this has just been such a talker, and we're so happy to have you to kind of dig into this here. So, Al, I want to start with you, because you wrote a letter to USA Track and Field and the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency saying, quote, "This moment of accountability should not be one for this athlete medicating after the loss of her mother, but one for you as an institution to reevaluate your adherence to a policy that is both rooted in racism and serves no identifiable public health interest." I mean, just what a way to put it. I just want to dig into what you wrote there and what you want to see change in these organizations and how they treat marijuana use, how they think about something, especially when she was using it in a state where it's legal. I mean, just how should things change?
Yeah, I think things should change because, athletes should have access to cannabis, right? When we think about quality of life and the fact that, we always, seem to act like we care so much about athletes' well-being. And when we think about the alternative to when we deal with things, you know what I'm saying, it's usually pills or it's alcoholism. And, what we've seen, and there's been a lot of tests to prove this, that cannabis can be very beneficial in so many different ways, but it's definitely not a performance-enhancing drug for sure, which is obviously should be the spirit of, a lot of the drugs that they have policies, for the Olympics.
Hey, Dr. Varma, I want to play some sound of Sha'Carri talking about how and why she used marijuana to cope with the loss of her mother.
So I apologize for the fact that I didn't know how to control my emotions or deal with my emotions during that time, but sitting here, I just say, don't judge me because I am human. I'm you. I just happen to run a little faster.
Dr. Varma, how common is it for people to use marijuana to cope with some of the emotions that they're dealing with, the mental health issues that they're dealing with? And have you seen this in your own patients?
Absolutely. I think that marijuana use is very common for a lot of people. Had you asked me this question ago, I would say that I had a very with its use and my patients. Let's not use it. Now I want to say it's one of curiosity, trying to understand what's going on and what are some of the underlying. And I think that that's really the takeaway for me, as Sha'Carri was talking about, like being able to cope and understanding that, whether it's anxiety or depression or grief, loss. Social anxiety is a big one, a reason why I see a lot of my patients using it, and especially young adults, that it's become sort of less stigmatized. But the problem is that, as a physician, we have to be very careful what we're recommending to our patients. So this is not something that I'm recommending as a coping technique. I happen to be a cognitive behavioral therapist and believe very much in the fact that we can deal with losses, deal with all of that things that COVID has brought us, for example, in the here and now with some real coping skills. And really that's what this conversation is about, is number one, detecting mental health problems and then being able to use a variety of techniques, whether it be, I call them the 4 M's of mental health: movement, mindfulness, mastery, meaningful engagement. And these are sort of 10 to free minutes that we can use that don't require substances. So I feel like the jury's still out. Like when you look at all of the studies, there is still conflicting results about the impact on the brain, but a lot of people do find it very useful. So I am more open and more understanding and understand the empathy and sort of the factors that bring the use about.
Yeah, that's some important context there. And Al, I mean, you mentioned a minute ago kind of just the question of, okay, can we really take a look at this and say, is this actually going to enhance performance, which was one of the things that was stated as, the issue here with what happened with Sha'Carri. But in addition to that, you're also in the cannabis industry and an advocate for legalization in general. So what do you hope all sports leagues will take away from this situation? I mean, we know just across the country, there's no legislation federally for marijuana, for the use of marijuana, for the use of recreational marijuana. So how can sports leagues kind of react to this when that's where we're at right now with this drug in this country?
Well, I think, here in the United States, I think that we have definitely taken a step forward when you think about all 4 major sports have had, either eliminated cannabis off of their testing or there's just no penalty, like when you use it. And when you think about, just use the NBA as an example, where, there is cannabis use and the quality and level of play is obviously extremely high. When you think about the stigma of cannabis, it was supposed to be a thing where you was less, active and, you would be less motivated, but that's not, true. And when you think about all the testing that has been provided, we just feel like cannabis is an alternative way for athletes to be able to medicate themselves safely and something that's just all natural compared to the pharmaceuticals and the opioids that are always prescribed to us.
Al Harrington and Dr. Sue Varma, such an important and interesting conversation that people are having right now across the country at their dinner tables. Thank you for joining us here to talk about this.
Thank you.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.